7 Texas horror stories that will haunt you forever. Watch now, if you dare. In the heart of Texas, darkness hung over the small town of Longview like a thick fog, ready to swallow whole anyone who dared slip beneath its surface. It was a place where shadows whispered secrets and the ground seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Folk spoke in hushed voices about the odd happenings, but deep down, they couldn't shake the chilling feeling that something was watching them, something ancient and malevolent. The first strange incident emerged from the old Ashton house. The decaying mansion sat at the end of a long, winding road, surrounded by a tangle of wild overgrown weeds. Locals said it was haunted, and those who ventured too close heard quiet laughter in the dead of night, echoing like a siren call. When the moon was full, the air would grow thick and heavy, and shadows danced in the windows as if the house were alive. They say a couple vanished there decades ago, and their spirits still wandered, unable to escape the nightmare they knew, and then there was the abandoned railway bridge just outside town. Legend had it that on stormy nights, if you parked beneath it, you could hear the phantom sound of a train, an iron beast crashing through, its whistle piercing the silence, even though no engine had run on those tracks in years. People claimed to see faces peering from the mist, their eyes wide with fear and sorrow. "You're never alone out there," they warned, voices trembling as they recalled stories of those who went missing. As the darkness deepened, tales spread like wildfire. In the dense woods of Lake the Pines, an old fisherman recounted his last trip. He cast his line just before sundown, but what came out of those murky waters wasn't a fish. It was a skeletal hand that reached for him, pulling him closer to the edge of madness. The fisherman fled, leaving his boat behind, but even now, he wouldn't speak of what he saw without breaking into a cold sweat. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The edges of sanity seem to blur under the weight of these tales, each one more tangled than the last, each one sending tremors down the spine. As days turned to nights, whispers darted through townsfolk's eyes, darting past like shadows that left a chill in their wake. Then came the evening when, out of the blue, a storm crashed against Longview, bringing a cacophony of wild winds and pouring rain. In the midst of the chaos, the rabid sound of the old clock tower echoed ominously, and as the last chime faded, a soft cry pierced the night who was calling out for help in the thunder's roar. And what other dark truths lay hidden beneath the Texas sky, waiting for the right moment to emerge? The wind howled like a wounded animal, weaving through the streets of Longview, its icy fingers clawing at the very soul of the town. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath, as if the universe was waiting for a secret to spill out into the night. The clock tower's last echo faded, leaving only the restless patter of rain against the pavement. From the corner of Maple and Elm, a figure emerged, drenched and trembling. It was Carla, a local waitress known for her spunk and charm, now looking as if she'd seen a ghost. Her wide eyes darted nervously, and her hands trembled at her sides. As she stumbled closer, the townsfolk gathered, their murmurs reflecting the rising tension. I heard it, the crying, her voice trembled, barely breaking through the roar of the storm. "What do you mean? What crying?" asked Tom, a stout man with a heart as big as his belly. He reached out, trying to comfort Carla, but she jerked away, her gaze locked on the rain-soaked alley behind them. It was coming from the Ashton house. She gasped. A voice, so desperate it called my name. The crowd gasped quietly, exchanging fearful glances. Rumors of the Ashton house had always been thick with dread, but hearing a living soul speak about it in such a way made their skin crawl. "Doesn't matter. It's just the storm playing tricks." Another voice chimed, though it lacked conviction. The uncertainty trickled into their hearts like the rain flooding the streets. But Carla couldn't be swayed. She had felt it, an energy powerful enough to grip her heart. Maybe it's the couple, someone whispered. Stuck in that house, never to be found. The words ignited a fire of anxiety. The very thought of being trapped in a nightmare made fingers twitch, and eyes shifted nervously to the distance. Longview had its share of disappearances, but it was different when a familiar voice echoed back. Who or what was seeking help? Before anyone could react, another cry cut through the storm, a wail that resonated deep, laced with the sorrow of the damned. It was disembodied yet hauntingly real, sending shockwaves through the assembly. Carla's face paled further, and she stepped back, shaken. We should go. Now. Someone shouted, but others stood rooted to the spot, their curiosity battling their fear. The clock tower struck again, rattling their nerves. The rain picked up, drenching them, but all they could hear was the echoed plea for help. Help me. The voice carried on the wind, unyielding and desperate. Eyes locked towards the dreadful silhouette of the Ashton house looming in the background. It beckoned them, a siren shrouded by shadow and mystery. In that moment, a collective decision loomed above them like the darkened sky. Would they brave the unknown, or flee back to the safety of their homes? With a quick look at one another, determination morphed into a pact. A group of 4 gathered: Carla, Tom, and 2 others, a decision forged through fear and the craving for understanding. We're going to find out what's in there, Carla spat, clenching her jaw. No turning back now. With a mix of terror and intrigue, they made their way toward the mansion. Each step felt heavier than the last. The only thing louder than their racing hearts was the relentless roar of the storm. As they approached the squeaky gate, an ominous creak echoed, rattling through the air. What awaited them within those decayed walls? As the group clutched flashlights, their beams trembled with uncertainty. Shadows leaped to life, distorted by their flickering lights. And just as they crossed the threshold, the cries crescendoed, wrapping around them like an icy embrace. Did you hear that? Tom whispered, wide-eyed. Yeah, but it was too late to turn back. They had crossed into the domain of the lost. What they would encounter, was it mere echoes of the past or a dark truth intent on consuming them? The door creaked open like a mouth preparing to swallow them whole. The atmosphere inside the Ashton house was thick, saturated with the scent of mildew and something more sinister that clung to the walls, leaving an unsettling sting in their noses. Carla stepped in first, her heart hammering against her ribcage while her flashlight beam danced across the peeling wallpaper, revealing patterns of long-forgotten whispers. Where do we go now? Tom asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if the house could hear him. Carla pointed toward the dimly lit hallway, where the cries seemed to pulse through the air, strong and laden with despair. This way, it's coming from here. The rest of the group hesitated momentarily, the weight of the choice pressing down on them. But curiosity and fear propelled them forward, deeper into the house's bowels. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath their feet, groaning like elderly bones protesting the burden of their presence. Each step felt like an intrusion, an awakening of something that had lain dormant for years. As they advanced, each flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with malevolence. Carla's hands were slick with sweat, and a tremor ran through her voice as she said, "Something terrible happened here. I can feel it." Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the darkness ahead. The group jumped, hearts racing, frozen in place as silence fell, heavy like the clouds outside, pressing down from the sky. Then came the faintest of whispers, riding on the wind that seeped through broken windows. "Help me!" The voice was more compelling than ever, reeking of grief. It clawed at Carla's heart, a siren call that resonated deep within her. She hesitated, glancing back at Tom and the others, whose faces were pale yet filled with a flicker of determination. "Who's in there?" One of the others, a nervous young woman named Jenna, piped up. "Do you think it's someone trapped? Or something?" Tom replied, tightening his grip on his flashlight. There was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, as if he feared the answers might be too much to handle. They continued forward, reaching the end of the hallway that opened into a dimly lit room. It was sparsely furnished with an old table and a single chair, both engulfed by thick layers of dust. The air felt charged with energy as if the walls were witnesses to an unspeakable tragedy, but it wasn't the room that horrified them, it was the image sprawled across the floor. Lying in the middle was an old diary, its pages fluttering as if stirred by an unseen hand. Carla knelt before it, her curiosity overpowering her dread. What if it's cursed? Jenna cautioned, her eyes wide as she bit her lip. Or it might give us answers, Carla said, her voice firm yet wavering. I have to know. As she reached out to open it, Tom caught her wrist. Wait. What if it's not safe? But Carla was already too far gone, her heartbeat racing in tandem with the rising tension. She opened the diary, revealing pages filled with frantic scribbles, the ink barely dry with emotion. The words seemed to pulse with life, drenched in sorrow and desperation, as if begging someone to heed their warning. Help me before it's too late, she read aloud. The room grew colder, and an icy wind howled through the crumbling walls, wrapping around them like a serpent. Just then, the lights began to flicker wildly, and the shadows shifted, almost alive. The air grew thick with panic, as a low growl resonated from the far corner of the room. It was a sound so primal, it threatened to consume them whole. What have we stumbled into? Tom whispered, his eyes wide with fear. But before anyone could answer, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang, echoing with the weight of finality. Everything changed in that split second, a line drawn between the safety of the outside world and the terror that imprisoned them now. What do we do? Jenna cried, backing towards a wall, wide-eyed and frantic. As the darkness closed in, Carla's breath caught in her throat, a crushing realization dawning upon her. They were not just seeking a voice, they were now part of the haunting itself. A tremor ran through her as the floor began to shudder, the cries rising to a fever pitch, wrapping around them like a noose. Could they escape the clutches of the past before it claimed them entirely? The answer lurked just beyond reach, deeper into the shadows. The truth was waiting, and so was something far worse. The growl intensified, a raw, guttural sound reverberating in the very core of their being, shaking the air around them. Carla's grip tightened on the diary, the pages trembling as though they were alive, pleading with her to not let go. Stay calm. Tom's voice cut through the tension, though it wavered, echoing back to them in a mocking tone. We need to figure out what is happening. Jenna pressed herself hard against the wall, her eyes darting around the room like trapped birds searching for a way out. This isn't just a haunted house, it's a tomb. With a sudden flash, Carla's flashlight flickered a final time before plunging them into darkness. The only illumination came from a pale glow that began to emanate from the diary itself. It pulsed like a heartbeat, bathing the room in a sickly hue that flickered eerily against the dust particles suspended in the thick air. Look! Carla pointed at the diary, her fear overshadowed by an unsettling sense of fascination. The text shifted and rearranged itself, as if the words were rearranging to communicate a flow of desperation dancing before their eyes. Help me before it's too late, Casa de Puerto Rico, they're coming. What the hell does that mean? Jenna shook her head violently, tears threatening to spill as the fear clawed at her throat. We need to leave. Now. Wait. Tom stepped closer. Let her read it. Maybe it's trying to tell us something about what happened here. Carla leaned over the diary. The words were becoming clearer, yet coalescing into a terrible urgency. It's not just a voice, there's something trapped here. Something angry. Something hungry. The shadows cast by the glow of the diary twisted and contorted into dark figures along the wall, their forms dancing violently. Carla's heart raced, she felt their despair as the cries crescendoed into a wailing cacophony, echoing off the walls like a whirlwind of pain. Carla! Close it! Tom urged, shaking slightly as panic filled his eyes. But it was too late. The shadows, once mere phantoms on the wall, moved forward, coalescing into grotesque faces twisted in torment. They emanated an aura of malevolence, claws reaching, fingers scraping against the air. Help us! They cried, their voices a chorus of despair, relentless, unyielding. Remember us, what do they want? Jenna yelled, her voice breaking as she stumbled back. Maybe they want to share their story, Carla whispered, feeling an inexplicable urge to understand compassion clashing with terror. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, a woman draped in tattered remnants of clothing, her eyes hollow and dead. She reached out toward them, a finger poised to point at the diary. The room plunged into a cold darkness, the light from the diary fading away, swallowed by her presence. "Help me, save us," the apparition breathed, her voice a chilling echo within the confines of their minds. "Run!" Tom shouted, grabbing Jenna's arm, pulling her toward the door that now seemed to pulse with the urgency of a beating heart, but it remained stubbornly shut. As they rushed back toward the door, Carla stood frozen, the gravity of the instant weighing so heavily on her that she could hardly breathe. They were absorbing something far larger than they had anticipated, a desperate plea for justice wrapped in centuries of horror. With a burst of courage, she shouted, "We can help you. Just tell us what you need." The shadows writhed, merging into one dark mass, swirling and boiling with anger. The woman's wail echoed in the storm of voices rising again, a deafening barrier that pushed back against them, bracing to swallow them whole. But just as the darkness surged forward, the temperature dropped further, and the energy shifted, time bending around them. A blinding flash erupted in the center of the room, illuminating everything in stark clarity before they were engulfed in utter blackness. Then, silence. Completeness. Had they fallen into the void, or had they stepped into another realm? A single ominous question gnawed at Carla's mind: what if they were now the unwitting keepers of a horrifying secret? Bound by an ancient curse they had awakened, the echoes of the past were stirring, and the real horrors were only beginning to surface. They needed to move before the house demanded payment in flesh and soul. The silence was deafening. The reality of the house felt suspended, the air thick with unspoken tension, as if they were caught in a web spun from shadow and fear. Carla's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing the urgency of their plight. Where had the light gone? Where were Tom and Jenna? "Hello?" She called out, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling as dread wrapped around her throat like a noose. "Carla?" Tom's voice floated back, sounding fragmented and distant. "Right here." Panic surged within her. She sped toward the echo of his voice, the ground feeling slippery beneath her feet. The world around her twisted and turned, shadows creeping at the edges of her vision, warping familiar spaces into a labyrinth of terror. Suddenly, a flicker of light ignited, an unnatural flame that danced and shimmered in the darkness. She squinted, her fingers outstretched, reaching desperately toward it. Tom and Jenna stood just beyond the glow, their faces marred by panic but miraculously intact. "Over here!" Jenna cried, her voice breaking through the veil. "We thought we lost you. Where do we go?" Carla shouted back. "What the hell is happening?" Tom shook his head, voice shaky. "That thing, it's still here. We're not safe yet." As the words left his mouth, the temperature plummeted again, a biting cold sweeping through the room that made the hairs on the back of Carla's neck stand on end. The shadows weren't just lurking, they were prowling, stalking them like a predator ready to strike. "They're coming for us," Jenna whimpered, horror widening her eyes. In that moment, the diary lay before them, abandoned on the floor but still glowing faintly. Its light pulsed erratically as if responding to their rising fear. Safe or cursed? They couldn't tell. All they knew was that it beckoned, something within it whispering secrets, craving their attention. "Don't you see?" Carla said breathlessly, "that diary, it holds the key. We have to figure out what it wants." But as she knelt to retrieve it, the atmosphere twisted, coiling tight around them like a living creature. The shadows stretched and swelled, grotesque forms rising from the floor, faces contorted in anguish, hands grasping in their direction. "Remember us," a chorus of voices wailed, haunting and pitiful, blending into one terrifying symphony of despair. "Carla! No!" Tom yelled, pulling her back just as the shadows lunged forward. His grip tightened around her arm, but the force of the darkness was overpowering. With a surge of defiance, Carla cried out, I'll free you. I'll help you find peace. The shadows hesitated, swirling uncertainly, their movements betraying a flicker of hope. Did they understand her? Suddenly, the air thundered with the growl again, more visceral than before, shaking the ground beneath them. In that moment of distraction, the diary-esque glow flared violently, blinding them. Now! Tom shouted. We have to go. He pulled Jenna, dragging her toward the far wall where another door stood I had barely noticed in the chaos. The glinting escape seemed to mock them, shimmering with potential freedom, but the figures lunged forward, reaching out with fingers like knives, shrieks filling the air. In a frantic rush, Carla seized the diary, clutching it like a lifeline. Together, they sprinted towards the door, hands gripping handles slick with sweat and dread. Please let this work. Carla muttered, hoping against hope as she turned the knob. The door creaked open just as the shadows bore down on them, but as they fled through the threshold, a deafening roar of rage erupted behind them. They stumbled into cold night air, gasping for breath, but the nightmare had only begun. What did we unleash? Jenna gasped, wide-eyed, trembling as they collapsed onto the ground. Carla looked back, staring into the abyss from which they had escaped. The shadows were now swirling around the doorway, pulsating with anger and desperation, but something else flickered behind them like an ember of forgotten desires. Whatever it is, Tom said, voice steadier now, we need to confront it. We must understand before. It consumes us. A shard of terror pierced through Carla as she realized, they couldn't run forever. The horrors of the Casa de Puerto Rico were rooted deep, and to sever their bond would demand a price they weren't sure they were prepared to pay. Then we have no choice, she whispered, we have to go back. The night trembled around them, anticipating the next plunge into darkness. They were not mere visitors anymore, they had become participants in a haunting legacy, and now, the house awaited their return. The chill in the night air clung to Carla's skin like a damp shroud, but she felt a fire igniting within her. They stood at the edge of the abyss, the shadows swirling just beyond the door like hungry wolves circling their prey. Uncertainty gnawed at her, twisting her gut relentlessly. What if it's worse inside? Jenna whispered, eyes darting around as if the darkness itself could pounce on them at any moment. Tom shook his head, determination etched across his features. We need answers. The diary, it's connected to whatever lurks in there. Fear tangled with resolve, and Carla felt herself nodding, her heart pounding out a desperate rhythm. Then let us go. She urged, her voice steadier than she felt. As they stepped back through the threshold, the door creaked ominously behind them, sealing them in. The candlelit glow of the diary flickered hungrily, now casting elongated shadows around the room like greedy fingers grasping for warmth. The coldness seeped into Carla's bones, yet she pushed on, taking a deep breath as she forced her trepidation aside. Where do we start? Jenna's voice was barely above a whisper, the tremor betraying her courage. Let us see what it says, Carla said, kneeling before the diary, her fingers brushing the pages. An unsettling sensation coursed through her, like a swarm of insects skittering over her skin. As the pages rustled, a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the light and plunging them into darkness. Panic surged as Carla fumbled to ignite the flame within her memory. She remembered the glow, how it beckoned them, how it felt alive. Stay close. Tom's voice cut through the chaos, steadying her racing heart. She could barely make out his form in the dark, but his presence anchored her. Carla, look! Jenna squealed, her voice a mix of fear and excitement as something glimmered at their feet. Underneath a pile of debris, they saw it, a shimmering locket. What's that doing here? Carla asked, knelt to examine it. Maybe it belongs to someone or something, Tom replied, his tone laced with unease. As Jenna carefully picked it up, a shiver raced down Carla's spine. The moment Jenna's fingers brushed the cold metal, a scream echoed through the house, a high-pitched wail suffused with anguish that seemed to reverberate off the walls, as if the house itself had come alive with agony. What was that? Jenna dropped the locket, her face pale as she backed away. I don't know. Carla shouted, instinctively reaching for the diary. But we have to see what we can find out. The diary's pages fluttered open, the air thick with anticipation as Carla's fingers skimmed across the yellowed paper. She could feel the pulse of energy emanating from it, a dark, manic thrum that whispered secrets of long-lost souls intertwined with their tragedy. Elders cursed the house. She read aloud as a dark image began to materialize. The blood of the innocent has stained the walls. To break the curse, one must return what was taken. Carla's voice trailed off, her heart racing as she sensed the ominous weight of the words. Return what was taken. Tom echoed, horror dawning in his eyes. What does that mean? What did they steal? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted sharply. The shadows darkened, swelling with anger as if summoned by the locket's echo of sorrow. They're angered. Jenna gasped, hands trembling. The shadows loomed larger around them, snapping like angry tendrils. The diary trembled in Carla's hands, its light pulsating wildly. We have to choose. She shouted against the oppressive dread. We can either confront them and find what they want, or we can keep searching, but we risk losing ourselves. A deafening silence fell, oppressive and foreboding, as they exchanged glances, each of them weighing the truth in that moment. I can't, Jenna stammered, her voice barely escaping her lips. Tom inhaled sharply, resolve etched in his features as he held Carla's gaze. We can't leave this place without knowing. We owe it to them. With the shadows creeping closer, extending their ghastly fingers towards them, Carla felt the fire in her belly flare up again. Then let's do this together. We must confront whatever haunts this house. The shadows writhed, furious as the diary began to glow brighter, casting an almost blinding light. With a deep breath, Carla stepped forward. Show us the truth. Then everything went dark again, and the last thing Carla saw was the sorrowful faces forming within the shadows, whispering in mournful agony their misunderstood anguish, reaching for the surface, yearning for a resolution, and in that moment, she understood, the house was not done with them yet. As the darkness enveloped them, an unsettling question echoed in her mind: what truly lay hidden within the Casa de Puerto Rico, and could they brave the hauntings to uncover it? The world around them disintegrated into utter blackness. A suffocating silence filled the air, and Carla felt the cold edges of despair trimming at her sanity. Was this it? Had they delved too deep? Her heart hammered against her ribcage as panic threatened to clamp its grip on her throat. Carla? Are you okay? Tom's voice floated through the void like a lifeline. I don't know. She managed, though her voice wavered. Just stay with me. The shadows swirled menacingly, a living mass of dread. Waves of sorrow crashed against her knowing heart, whispering secrets of grief and tragedy, all of it searching for release. The darkness tightened around them, like an embrace that promised to suffocate. Did we anger them? Jenna croaked, her breath shallow and quick. What do we do? Carla's thoughts raced. We've got to find out what was taken. The diary, what else did it say? She fumbled in the pitch, her fingers brushing over the diary's worn edge, striving to focus on its concealed truths. As she opened it again, a weak flicker of light emerged, offering a hazy view of the pages. There. It says something about creating a link. Only through understanding can the cycle be unbroken. Understanding? Tom echoed, his brow furrowing. They want us to feel their pain. Maybe, Carla said, swallowing down her fear. But how? A gust of wind swept past them, sheer panic racing through her veins as whispers echoed from the dark. The voices merged into a cacophony of sorrow, frantic pleas mingled with agonizing wails. They all cried for a chance to be heard, to be remembered. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, revealing distorted faces frozen in a state of eternal torment. Carla's stomach dropped, the weight of their grief pressing heavily on her chest. There was rage there, pain that was not merely from the past but palpable in the present. Can we help them? Jenna's voice tremored, tinged with horror. I think we have to at least try, Carla replied, a slow determination blooming inside her despite the fear. What if we share our pain, our fears? Maybe they'll understand. Are you serious? Tom hesitated, doubt hanging in the air like thick fog. Yes. If we connect with them, maybe we can let them know they're not alone. Inspiration surged through Carla, igniting her resolve. Just follow my lead. With a deep breath, she began. I am scared. I feel trapped by my fears, suffocated by what I don't understand. The shadows appeared to pause momentarily, drawn in by her admission. Slowly, she continued, opening her heart to them. I feel like I've abandoned parts of myself, parts that ache to be whole. Jenna joined in, her voice soft but growing stronger. I feel lost too. Life is overwhelming. I keep looking for a purpose, but it's like I'm screaming into the void. Tom's voice broke through the weight of silence. I'm terrified of what the future holds. I don't know where I belong. But I want to break free. Their confessions filled the air, intertwining with the sadness of the shadows. She felt the energy shift, responding to their vulnerability. The sorrow around them simmered, transforming into something new, a shared connection forged through pain. Then, a blinding flash illuminated the room, the shadows swirling violently as if a storm had erupted. What is happening? Jenna shrieked, shielding her eyes. We're breaking through. Carla shouted, exhilaration seeping into her fear. Keep going. In the chaotic light, the faces began to shift, transforming from tormented beings into serene visages. They reached out, bridging the gap between the living and the dead, a glance filled with recognition, understanding, and vulnerability. A sudden wind howled, pushing them backward, and just as quickly as it started, the light vanished, leaving them in oppressive darkness once again. Did it work? Jenna murmured, trembling as she clutched Carla's arm. I don't know, Carla whispered back, her throat dry. The shadows were still there, but something felt different, less suffocating, more thoughtful. From the depths, she heard a voice. Clear and resonant, it whispered through the darkness, return to us. We await what was taken. Carla's heart raced as shadows began to contort again, forming pathways that beckoned her. What does that mean? She gasped, dread washing over her anew. What do we have to return? The weight of unfinished business settled around them like a thick fog. The house pulsed with anticipation, and Carla understood that they had merely scratched the surface. As they stood there, lingering in uncertainty, a chilling realization dawned upon her. What if the shadows were not just ghosts of the past but guardians of dark truths yet to be uncovered? And without knowing what lay ahead, Carla took a tentative step into the unknown. The next revelation awaited just beyond the veil, and she could only hope they were ready for whatever horrors awaited them. Would they uncover the lost soul's needs or fall victim to the very darkness that binds them? The shadows pulsed with a life of their own, and Carla felt a shiver crawl down her spine as the air thickened. It was as if the darkness itself knew their fears and was eager to exploit them. What do we have to return? She whispered again, her voice trembling. Jenna's grip tightened on Carla's arm, her pulse quickening. Maybe it means we can't leave until we give them something. But what? Her words hung in the air, heavy and laden with dread. The whisper from the depths intensified, merging with the rushing wind that brushed against their skin like phantom hands. Return to us. It was a beckoning, soothing and sinister all at once. Let us stay together, Tom said, his voice steady but unsure. If we have to face this, we face it as a team. As they moved deeper into the shadows, the very ground beneath them felt alive, each step heavy with anticipation. The air chilled, and Carla could feel the sub-zero caress of despair creeping into her bones. What if returning means something we can't give? She wondered aloud. Then, through the oppressive darkness, a flicker of memory surged within Carla. The diary. It mentioned a ritual, a way to release their anguish. Suddenly, determination struck her like a lightning bolt. What if we could connect through our memories and theirs? We can share the weight of loss. We can turn their grief into something powerful. Are we really prepared for whatever's waiting for us? Tom's brow knitted with worry, but Carla could see that familiar spark of courage in his eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "But it can't be worse than standing here, trapped in this endless night." The urgency tugged at her heart. They gathered in a tight circle, stepping closer together, their hands clasped tightly. "Let us focus on the losses we've experienced. Pain shared is pain halved, right?" Jenna suggested, her uncertainty contrasting with quiet strength. "Okay," Carla nodded. "Let us start. I'll go first." She could feel the heaviness in her chest. "I lost my grandmother last year. She was my anchor. Not a day goes by that I don't feel that empty space. I always thought she'd be there to guide me through life." A moment of silence followed, then Jenna took a deep breath. "I lost my brother when we were kids. He was my best friend. I still hear him laughing, and sometimes I wonder if he would made it out here, if he would lived his dreams." Tom's voice trembled as he added, "My dad, he passed away unexpectedly. One moment he was there, and the next, I was left wondering what I could said, what I could done." As they shared their memories, the shadows seemed to still, the cacophony fading into an eerie calm. Carla could almost feel the darkness drawing closer, listening, absorbing each word. Then, a sudden gust shattered the quietude. The stir of cold air intensified, whipping around them like a twister, carrying whispers of the lost souls. "Share the stories," the voices implored. "What is happening?" Jenna gasped, her eyes wide. The wind swirled faster, howling with intensity, and the very fabric of the darkness seemed to respond to their confessions. "Keep going," Carla cried, voice hoarse with the strain. "We're getting through. They want us to reach deeper." But just then, the shadows erupted around them, consuming their whispers. Faces of despair morphed from the darkness, twisted with agony, all longing for recognition. They looked like the very souls they had just spoken of, but transformed into vengeful beings. Their mouths opened, releasing a torrent of sound that merged with the wind screams of grief, desperate and demanding. "Return to US." They shrieked, the air vibrating with urgency. The pressure built, squeezing the air from Carla's lungs. "What do they want?" She shouted over the deafening roars. An icy silence fell just as suddenly. And then, amidst the stillness, a single soul stepped forward. It looked through the shadows like a beacon of hope, a ghost illuminated by a faint, otherworldly glow. Its features shimmered with both sadness and understanding. "Give us what was taken," it implored softly, the voice filled with sorrow, yet steady. Carla's heart pounded. "What was taken?" she whispered, the question rising from the pit of her stomach like bile. The spirit stared deep into her eyes and, for a split second, she felt a flicker of connection, no longer just a connection through shared grief, but a deeper bond now forming between the living and the dead. They were one, yet still somehow separate. And as the shadows surged again, their demands becoming a deafening roar, Carla's thoughts raced. Was this a pathway to salvation or full exposure to turmoil unheard? Just then, the spirit gestured toward the darkness behind it, revealing a glimmering path that seemed to pulse with energy. "The truth lies ahead. You must choose." The prospect of escape and the promise of revelation hung in the air, each option heavier and more ominous than the last. Would they dare to take that step into the unknown, with the fragility of life and death as their only guiding light? With her heart pounding loudly against her ribcage, Carla took a breath, ready to plunge deep into the mysteries that awaited them. The moment Carla stepped forward, the shadows rippled like water disturbed by a stone. She could feel an energy washing over her, a terrifying mix of dread and anticipation. The spirit's gaze pierced right through her, pulling her closer to the path that glimmered with ethereal light. "Are we really doing this?" Jenna's voice trembled, the fear palpable in her tone. Tom looked between them, searching for reassurance. His eyes reflected Carla's brave facade, but she could feel his uncertainty. "We have to face it," Carla urged, her voice wavering slightly. "If we want answers, we must walk this path. We can't keep running." Jenna hesitated, gripping Carla's hand tighter. But what if we lose ourselves in this darkness? What if we become like them? The spirit nodded, as if acknowledging their fears, its spectral features softening. You are stronger than you know. You must embrace your grief. It is a part of you. With one last look at the gut-wrenching gloom that surrounded them, they stepped forward together, the glimmering trail swallowed by shadows behind them. Each stride felt heavier, as if the darkness sought to pull them back. The air crackled, the whispers echoing around them, entwining with their memories. Images flickered at the edge of Carla's mind, her grandmother's gentle touch, her laughter mixing with the wind, the playful bickering between Jenna and her brother, Tom's shared moments with his father. These poignant memories overlaid the path, creating a tapestry woven with their collective sorrow. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shifted. The once stable path wobbled, as if the very ground was questioning their resolve. Carla felt the panic swell in her chest. What now? We have to keep moving. A blinding flash illuminated the darkness. They stumbled backward, shielding their eyes. When they opened them, the shadows transformed into rich landscapes pulled from their own histories: a field of wildflowers, a family home, a park where they had played as children. What is this? Jenna gasped, gazing around in disbelief. A flicker of sadness danced across her face as she wandered through the recreated memories. This is our past, Tom whispered, awestruck. But why is it here? The spirit glided slowly to the forefront, the light pulsing brighter. To show you what it means to carry loss. You must recognize the beauty intertwined with your pain. A gust of wind whipped through, floating petals around them with grace. As the scene glimmered with life, they became aware of other shadows lurking just beyond the edges. Faces peered out, spectral expressions mingling with the joy of the past and the anguish of what they had lost. See. The spirit encouraged, gesturing toward the swirling silhouettes. These are the memories you hold. They breathe longing, but also hope. You must confront these shadows. If they are everlasting, so too is your love. Tom stepped closer to one of the faces, a boy around 8 with familiar eyes. It was a younger version of Jenna's brother. Is this? He whispered, horrified and fascinated. Can you hear me? The boy's face crinkled into a smile, but behind it lay an ocean of sadness. Yet as he spoke, his voice was muted, lost within a cacophony of emotions that echoed around them. The others turned, shadows shifting in response to the unspoken words that in that instant, Carla understood the magnitude of what they faced. These were the dreams never realized, the moments forever unfulfilled. They don't want to harm us. They want to be remembered. But another wave of despair struck them as Carla's heart sank. They couldn't simply abandon these souls. What do we do? She cried out, her voice breaking. The truth is a choice, the spirit replied softly, the light flickering as it backed away, giving way to the troubled memories swirling around them. You must first break through the surface of what binds them to this place. Only then can both worlds heal. More shadows converged, eyes filled with longing, still demanding recognition. The urgency grew, and the ground beneath them pulsed as a surge of emotion crashed. Against Carla's panic rose, she realized that the path had become distorted, shifting in response to the tug of unseen forces. Stay with me. She shouted, fear clawing at her throat. We can't allow ourselves to break. Then, in a horrifying twist, the landscape shattered like glass. Memories surged around them, a tempest of sound and fury. Fractured pieces of time and emotion clawed for attention, each fragment threatening to take them under, and just as the darkness threatened to swallow them whole, the spirit reappeared, eerily calm amid the chaos. What has been hidden will reveal itself, but you must hold on. The choice you face will decide not only your fate but that of those trapped here. With her heart racing and uncertainty clawing at her mind, Carla took a breath. The weight of their grief, their choice, pressed on her shoulders like a leaden cloak. Time surged forward, and she knew they had to make a decision. Would they delve deeper into their past, or try to escape the grasp of memories they weren't ready to face? In that moment, she realized, with horrifying clarity, the true question that loomed before them. Would they dare to embrace the truth, or would they become shackled to the very shadows they feared? As the tempest swirled around them, Carla braced herself, knowing they must confront the ultimate choice of life, or death. The swirling chaos of memories and shadows enveloped them like a raging storm, and Carla felt the weight of despair crash over her. Her heart thundered in her chest, the pulse echoing in her ears. They could feel the shadows pulling at their limbs, trying to drag them under. She gathered her thoughts, focusing on the spirit's message. What had been hidden would reveal itself if they held on tight. We need to choose. Carla yelled over the cacophony, her voice rising above the dissonance of anguish. We have to let them know they're not forgotten. We have to give them what they lost. Tom and Jenna exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, but a flicker of understanding passed between them, igniting a spark of determination. They want us to recognize them, to remember their stories, Tom said, his voice gaining strength. We need to honor them, acknowledge their pain. Carla stepped forward, pushing through the disorientation and the grasping shadows. Each of us has to claim what we've lost and let them know they're allowed to be free. The grasping shadows paused. It felt as if the air itself held its breath, waiting. I'll go first, Jenna declared, her voice gaining confidence. I never got to say goodbye to my brother. As she stepped into the center of the maelstrom, she closed her eyes, and the noise died down, replaced by silence. I loved you more than words can say, she began, tears streaming down her cheeks. You were always the light of my life. I wish I could hold you one more time. You were taken too soon, and I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me. But you'll always be part of me. As her heart poured out the words, the shadows shifted, swirling in a whirlpool of sorrow that seemed to listen. The boy's face emerged for a moment, eyes brimming with gratitude, before vanishing back into the darkness, the air filled with warmth that brushed against Jenna's skin. Now it's my turn, Tom said, his voice unwavering. Dad, I know I took you for granted. I didn't appreciate how much you did for me until it was too late. I'm so sorry for the things left unsaid. I hope you can forgive me. I want you to know I carry your lessons in my heart every day. With each confession, the shadows twisted and morphed. Faces appeared, glowing in the ether, and the anguished wails transformed into soft, reassuring words. The air shifted, becoming lighter, as if they were shedding the weight of grief held for so long. Carla felt the shadows ebbing away, but she also knew the hardest part was still ahead. I lost my grandmother, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. She was my rock when the world felt unstable. The stories she shared shaped who I am. I miss her so much, and I regret not saying all the things that mattered. I wish she could have seen who I've become. Please, if you hear me, know you are loved beyond measure. In that moment, a brilliant light enveloped the darkness. The pain-soaked shadows collapsed into a soft embrace of quietude. Carla felt something shift in the reverberating air, like the gentle lifting of a weight they had carried together. Stand together, the spirit urged, its voice echoing with wisdom. They linked their hands, forming a solid unity, allowing the warmth of their shared memories to flow between them. With every confession, the terrain of torment transformed. Before we can truly free them, we have to face one last truth together, the spirit said, and the ground began to pulse beneath them. What do you fear most? Carla's heart raced. What if we become trapped? What if we're not strong enough? Those feelings of dread swelled inside her, but she released them. But what if we can save them? She echoed, strengthened by their shared conviction. Together, you hold the power, the spirit urged. Before them, an archway of shimmering light emerged, shadowed faces peering back with tears of joy glistening in hollow eyes. Step through. Embrace the truth together. Fueled by fear yet empowered by hope, they exchanged a final glance. This was their moment, their fight against the darkness. With one collective breath, they stepped through the vibrant archway. Instantly, the darkness dispersed. They found themselves standing before the old Ashton house, bathed in moonlight, its twisted forms now softer, echoing memories of sorrow transformed. The air felt crisp and alive, almost electric. In that serene silence, the shadowy figures they had confronted began departing, their faces no longer twisted by grief but softened with release. The threads binding the house to their pain untangled, threads becoming wispy remnants of stories finally told. Tears streamed down their faces as they breathed in the weightlessness of the moment. The truth had unfolded, not with vengeance but with acceptance and compassion. They were freed. As they took in the beauty of a newly freed space, Carla felt a rush of warmth and contentment. They had come so far, facing unimaginable fears, but they stood triumphant together. "Let us go home," she whispered, intertwining her fingers with her friends, their bond now stronger than any darkness they had faced. It was time to embrace life anew, woven forever together by love and remembrance. As they walked away, shadows faded behind them, memories now infused with light and hopes painted vivid with love. The burden had shifted, the haunting legacy became a story of healing. And deep within the confines of the Ashton house, echoes of gratitude lingered, waiting to be carried through time. This was the light they had fought for, the truth of their journey, a radiant testament to the power of facing fears and honoring what was lost. So, dear friends, this is it. If you felt the raw intensity of this story, give a shout out by smashing that like button now. You need to subscribe immediately, so don't miss any of our exclusive tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. This is the moment to show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this conclusion. You might be featured in the next video. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear this heart-pounding conclusion. Together, we will navigate these chilling stories, hand in hand.